Obviously, you have gone through a lot into developing this app, and it's obviously a very successful business at the moment. So what is the current status of your business?
Okay, so we've conducted over $1 million of research and development. So obviously in the beginning, it's hard to get funding for any business. And I'll probably touch on the story a bit later, but the main thing is where it stands is that we operate in London, in San Francisco, New York, Washington, D.C., and in Australia. But the way we operate is a bit stealthy, I'd say. So it appears to be a simple booking application where you press one button and you can get a cab. But the idea is that any entry to market is quite difficult. So the way I did it was that I designed a payment system, a complementary system, where drivers could take payments from passengers. Although that didn't seem like a huge market, we found out that in London, around 70% of taxis actually don't take card payments. And you have more than 80% of consumers who actually want to pay by card, which is quite obvious. So that became another market for us, but we didn't intend to actually go into that market. But with Taxi 24/7 emerging, that also became a profitable area for us. But as it stands, we have over 43 employees internationally. So it is kind of like a booming thing for us. And we've only established a revenue model just late last year, a proper revenue model after doing a bit of trial and error. So in terms of getting funding, I think that's probably one of the biggest things for any business. I remember when I started off, I saw this government grant which was on offer. I think it was around $250,000, $250,000. And I remember that the due date was, I think, in 3 or 4 days' time. I called them up and said, was I able to apply for this particular grant? And they said, no, you can't. You're under 18. There's a lot of other issues. You just started out. You don't have a proper business plan in place. And I still don't have a business plan, to be honest. And I think that's not the most important thing. And I've managed to get investment. I've managed to collect a large round of funding. Okay, so the idea was that the government grant, obviously I called up 3 days later to find out that they'd intentionally said that so I wouldn't get any funding. I don't know what the motives were, but that angered me a lot. So what I did was, I don't think it's a typical entrepreneurial thing to do, but what I did was I went out and wrote a letter to the Prime Minister of Australia, the former Prime Minister, who was Julia Gillard. It was a 2-page letter which basically said that that the Australian system is quite bad. So in terms of funding, businesses can't get funding. It was the honest truth. So I remember I forgot about all that kind of rant that I went on about, and I think it was a month later that I received a letter from the Prime Minister, and she said that you should apply for a grant with USYD Industry, which is a great organisation, a government organisation anyway. So I applied for that particular grant with not a lot of reference papers. I just attached that Prime Minister's letter as supporting documentation, and that was it. Yeah, so I managed to get a huge amount of funding, and for 3 consecutive years I've been getting that funding, and it's been quite successful ever since. But the idea is to always go for it, and we actually hear that a lot. Going for it, trying things out, but we're always fearful of what's to come, what the outcome could be. Last year, before my trials, yes, I've done the HSC, so before my trials, I recall that we were having some difficulties opening up a HSBC account, which we needed for our company in the UK. And it was a week out from my trials. So we had 2 trials. I'd done my first trial. I was about to do my second trial. And all of a sudden, I said, I just want to go to the UK. I want to get this sorted. And without having a second thought, I flew on the next flight to London. So I was in London, and I remember walking into HSBC, which is a huge bank, as we all know, and I sat there and said, look, I want to open up a HSBC account. They said, when did you turn 18? I said, just yesterday. And they're like, okay, so what's your cash flow statements? I said, I don't have any cash flow statements on me. And the other thing they said was, okay, so are you a British citizen? I'm like, no, I'm an Australian citizen. And they're like, look, it's quite hard to get an account opened here. There's nothing we can do. And I said, okay, if there's nothing you can do, you should have told me that when I was in Sydney, not when I'm right here in front of you. So they're like, look, they basically denied the responsibility. And I remember saying to them, I'm going to complain to the headquarters. And they're like, well, that doesn't work quite well, does it? It's HSBC. It's not your average small business. And I said, look, tell me where the address is. It's like Canary Wharf, which is a luxury place to go to. So I remember getting it. So I walked out, and my dad's like, so should we go to the hotel, or should we go somewhere else? Should we, what are we doing now? Like, tell me. Our main idea to come to London was to open up a HSBC account, and we haven't achieved that. So what do? We've wasted all that money. And I remember telling my dad, I'm going to go to the headquarters no matter what happens. I remember going to the headquarters, which was quite exciting, we were going through police checkpoints and we got to the HSBC headquarters. I remember walking in and they searched our bags and they're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I want to speak to the manager. I want to speak to someone about this problem. And they're like, okay, you know, this is HSBC, you know that. And I'm like, yes, I do, but I need to speak to someone. And I remember getting the chance to speak to someone. This guy was on, he didn't have any lunch break on that particular day because HSBC Canary Wharf branch is the headquarters for their global operations. And I got a chance to speak to two of the executives. So one of the executives spared some time. He helped me open up my account, which was quite successful anyway, and everything was perfect then. And that guy told me that, you know, you're 18, that doesn't matter, but at least you defied all things and came here. So it's about giving it a go. And right after that meeting, I had a meeting with a Swedish company, which is a large payment company, just like PayPal. We also partnered up with PayPal. But that company is called USYD. And USYD basically, I had a meeting with them at 2 p.m. I was quite late for that meeting. And my dad said, look, we've already achieved what we had to. Let's just go home now. And I said, no, let's take it easy. Let's go to USYD. I want to meet these guys. And I sat there. This is a multi-million dollar company. They have over $110 million of funding, over 200 employees. And I sat there in their boardroom trying to close a deal with them. And I remember when I walked in, and normally I don't tell, so whenever I do business, I normally don't tell them 18 because I think that usually puts people off. That's quite obvious. So I walked in there and they're like, you know, they're all these adults, basically adults, and they looked at me saying, oh, this guy's 18. Have you been deceived or something? So I sat down in front of him and the guy's like, look, do we actually need to partner up with you? So can't we just do whatever, you know, can't we just make our own kind of app? We have enough funding, don't we? And I stared at him and I said, look, why don't I just go with PayPal instead? And he's like, wow, did you have the guts to just say that to me? And I remember just laughing back at him. So we managed to get through that partnership as well. So the idea is that why do we fear things? Why do we try to limit ourselves when anything is possible? You know, I've met so many people who have fantastic ideas, probably in this room as well. But the only reason they don't go for it is because something is limiting themselves. Something is limiting them. It might be that you guys are here. That could be a factor why you can't achieve what you want to. And the main question I get asked is, why am I here if I'm trying to pitch that, you know, you should start your own business, etc. I think for me, I just want to understand why others value education so much. So why is studying economics the path to starting your own business? I don't actually believe that it is. But for the sake of it, I just want to learn, you know, what ideas am I taught or what am I missing out on? And I think so far the practical knowledge they can gain by taking a risk at a young age is a lot more valuable than you would know by sitting here. So that's the truth about it.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you.